Hey folks, it's Sarenth. So we explored in the last video a little bit of what the heathen worldview is. We're going to dig into that a little bit more. Specifically, we're going to approach first the basics of a polytheist worldview. So in the last video, I mentioned brief explanations of what polytheism and animism are. I'm going to go over them again just so that we actually hit that and we're clear. So since I know not everybody who runs across this channel is going to understand polytheism, heathenry, or northern tradition, that kind of thing, I will be devoting the first couple episodes to really exploring this and fleshing this out. And then as we go along, we'll dig deeper into things. So polytheism, again, is the belief in and worship of many gods. That's it. That's the nutshell. It's a worldview. It tells us nothing about the way a given polytheist religion, culture, etc. is going to worship, or even the gods that it worships. It just says, hey, there's many gods, we worship them. That's it. So that's why when I talk about polytheism, I don't generally speak about it as a religion. I speak about it as a theological worldview. So what gods one worships, what ancestors one may know or honor, what spirits one worships, all of these are kind of left up in the air with just saying, I'm a polytheist. It doesn't really say much. It's like a very baseline definition, very baseline theological viewpoint. So as polytheists, you really kind of need to put some more meat on this very simple bone skeleton for us to get somewhere. This is why a word like heathen does so much heavy lifting. So as polytheist religions believe in and worship many spirits, polytheism is generally also animist. I have never encountered polytheism without an animist component to it. Whether you talk about the dryads and naiads of Greek polytheism, or the Vetir or Vits or whites of heathenry, I don't really know of a polytheism that doesn't have some kind of spirits in them. So to say as a general rule that animism is in polytheism. So what is animism? Again, it's the belief that all things are endowed with some kind of soul or animating force. Like polytheism, it's a worldview, and it's one that I think is the foundation of all polytheist religions and cultures. For instance, in the heathen northern tradition creation story, the Aesir gods Othin, along with his brothers Vili and Ve, create the Dvergar, known colloquially as the dwarves. So once we start expanding away from the concepts of polytheism and animism as worldviews, we really got to get into specific polytheist religions. So this affects what our priorities are, how we operate within our societies. So a worldview is something which shapes our understanding of how things are. So if we have the idea that there is only one God and that there are, if we have that idea, we automatically exclude the notion of many. Mono, one, God. That's it. In polytheism, we reject that there's only one God, and that we also make the claim that there are many gods worthy of worship, and we set ourselves in automatic opposition to monotheist institutions and what they have to say about how reality works. That's pretty big. And we're also kind of immediately opposed to the overculture in this regard. In embracing polytheism, we also are choosing various subcultures and subversions of societal norms right from the get-go. So this rejection of societal norms, like monotheism being the default worldview, for a majority of Americans doesn't necessarily translate into a wholesale rejection of the overculture's norms. What I mean is that just because I'm rejecting monotheism does not necessarily mean a given heathen is going to wholesale reject everything America in its current form has to offer. However you feel about that. So there are polytheists throughout various axes of backgrounds, politics, and finances. So it's worth stating that polytheism itself, as a worldview, does not have a single political view in and of itself. Again, polytheism is the belief in and worship of many gods. No more, no less. Politics, so far as polytheism is concerned, is not really of importance with regards to the simple statement that there are many gods and we worship them. Many polytheists all over the spectrum will insist that their particular viewpoint is the one that is shared by their gods. And that's their belief. Long story short, I'm not here to argue it. I just think that there's a bit of foolishness in automatically assuming the gods are on your side just because you happen to be worshiping them, and that their politics are yours, and vice versa. It's true that certain political viewpoints may be favored within a certain polytheist worldview. But, for instance, if you look at the history of ancient heathen culture, there was clear class divisions, at least as far as the lore is concerned, that we have available to us. Whether you're looking at the Rigsthula, which sets up the class system of thralls, carls, and jarls, or if you're looking at just the straight-up information we have about how ancient heathen societies operated, there was class division. Was that mandated by the gods? Well, it depends on your sourcing and it depends on your beliefs. So, it doesn't exactly follow that the gods were only worshipped by one political class, but that people tended to worship down certain lines. For instance, Othin was very much seen as the elite god, the elite's god. So you'll see a lot of jarls and chieftains and so on worshipping him, whereas the everyman's god was usually referred to as Thor, god of thunder and lightning. So, does that automatically mean that Othin has nothing to do with the everyman? I don't think so. But it's worth noting the long-term implications of certain gods and where they fall into historically informed pieces of writing. This is stuff that informs our revival, or doesn't. Something that Ocean brought up, and I really appreciate this, is that the past gets a vote, not a veto. We're reviving it. We choose how it revives. So this is, to me, something that we share in tandem with the gods. And that this is kind of a continuation of what I mentioned earlier in the unfolding of the web of Earther or Weird. Because we are co-creating. Well, in this revival we call Heathenry, we are co-creating with the gods. We are co-creating this revival. They can't revive Heathenry without us, and we certainly can't revive it without them. So we're certainly not going to be able to bring back the thrall system, not that I would want to, because it was brutal, it was horrible. Nor do I really want to bring back the Carl of the Jarl system either. Long story short, trying to wholesale revive the political institutions of the past is really not what I'm aiming for with my heathenry. And I know that for some heathens, that is their aim, and good luck to you. I don't know how you're going to do it accurately in the current overculture, but not my heathenry, not my Gothi, not my kindred. So, getting back to it, this is different than one's religious beliefs within a polytheist worldview leading to certain actions taken in concert with your ethical, moral, or political beliefs. So, for instance, in my case, I hold Jorth as a goddess, or the embodiment of the earth, the goddess embodiment of the earth. Her name literally means earth. So to me, she is Midgarth itself, Middle Earth, this world. So it follows from my polytheist belief that the gods are due honor, respect, reverence, and worship. So I would do all I can to lessen my impact on the earth as a form of duty and service to Jorth. This comports nicely with my political, ethical, and moral stances on the environment and my desire to lessen the impact on the environment. But it's not Jorth coming to me and saying, you must patronize this shop, you must do this political action, or you can't worship me. That is not something the goddess has put on me. This is something I am doing so that my spiritual, moral, ethical values all come together and are cohesive with each other. So, not all of my political and other stances survived as I grew into an adult, nor as a pagan. As a former Catholic, I held the ethical values of forgiveness and the moral value of turning the other cheek. So, the ethic of forgiveness greatly changed in becoming a pagan, especially it changed when I became a heathen. So I do not hold to the old standards that I did when I was a Catholic. I would be very surprised for anybody that has become a heathen for them to hold pacifist stances in general. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying I'd be surprised. So I dropped the moral value of turning the other cheek entirely on becoming a pagan, and it's not enough to ask for forgiveness. The other person has to prove themselves worthy of that forgiveness. Me extending forgiveness is a generosity if I feel like they've earned that mercy or that generosity. And this gets into gift for a gift. So gift for a gift, reciprocity. So I talked about this, about existing between us, the gods, ancestors, and Vatir. It also exists between us as people. So reciprocity and right relationship exists between us and the gods, us and the ancestors, us and the spirits, and between us as members of different communities or as members of the same community. So what matters at the end of the day as to whether a person is or is not a polytheist is that they believe many gods and worship at least one of them. And wrapped up in that worldview is that they at least believe that there are some kinds of things we might call spirits. What this doesn't imply is mythic literalism. You don't have to believe like there is literally a tree with worlds dangling off of it. You can look at it in a mythopoetic sense, that all the worlds exist here together in creation. And maybe you do believe that there's this great big tree that our world is just one of many on. Or maybe you think of it as a spiritual navigation tool. Or perhaps Jotunheim is in the east, and so the direction of the east is the direction of the Jotuns. And the direction of south is the direction of fire and warmth. And so that's the direction where Muspelheim is. So it doesn't follow that you must follow a strictly mythical map, literally mythical map, when you're talking about religious beliefs and understanding of gods, ancestors, and spirits. That being said, you actually have to believe that the gods are real in some sense to be a polytheist. If they're nothing more than mental projections, then they're nothing more than mental projections, mental images, things that we're doing as self-soothing. So if you're not holding a relationship with an external entity or force or being of power, might, holiness, it's really missing the point of being polytheist. Because if you're not worshiping the gods, ancestors, and spirits, I mean, that's really the action of being a polytheist. Because we can't just believe, our belief must engender action. So going back to my example with Yorth, I believe the earth is holy because I believe the earth itself, being made up of many spirits and being made up of at least one, if not many gods and goddesses, is deserving and worthy of reverence, respect, and worship. And so I comport my actions and my living in this world to the best of my ability to live in concert with those values. So I can reach down and touch my gods, quite literally. And this doesn't remove the mythic, poetic sense of the gods are all around us, with us, co-creating. But it also doesn't imply that they're just mental images or projections and that I'm just making this up and playing, acting at a spiritual understanding of the world around me. So if you take nothing else away, take that our relationships within polytheism have to be real, reciprocal between ourselves and the Ginregen, the mighty powers, the holy powers. They have to be in some way, shape, or form reciprocal and right in relationship, so that we are respected, and so that the gods, ancestors, and spirits, including their physical forms here, including the addressing we give them at, say, our sacred places like our altars, so that our actions and our words comport with our beliefs and what our cultures have to say about our place in things. So thank you again for joining me here. This is certainly not the do-all end-all. I will be looking forward to seeing you in the next one.